Welcome, everyone, to Women of the Military podcast. I'm really excited to have Barb here to talk about her story and a little bit about IVMF. So, I'm really excited to do this interview. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, Amanda. I can't wait to get this conversation going.
So, I always like to start the interview with why did you decide to join the military?
I'm grateful. It's my expectation for my family was that I'd go off to college. I've been working since I was 14 years old, and that little bit of spare change didn't get me very far. So, first semester, I was going to take the ASVAB one day, and on that day of the test, learned that ROTC was on campus, and they had one scholarship left to give in nuclear command and control. And I said, yes, please. And they said, well, we'll throw in a master's too. And whatever you want to study, there's nothing you can learn here that you're going to need on the job. So it was an opportunity for a future that I had in mind through education. And I came to love the Air Force and serving our country. I'm still grateful for the opportunity.
So, you said you were taking the ASVAB and then you found out about ROTC. How did you find out about ROTC?
I walked out the back door of my dorm at University of Iowa, and literally behind my dorm is the ROTC building. I didn't know the acronym, but it's obvious that it was military. It was the day of the ASVAB. I walked in there first thing in the morning and met the captain, who said he was sweating it. He had one left to give first semester of my freshman year.
Wow, that's so awesome. Like the timing was perfect and life-changing for you.
It was only, and there isn't a wrong pathway. My son, who swore he would never do what his mom and dad did and go active duty, then enlisted at 17, and so that he could go to school and serve at the same time in the Guard, just a different pathway. It doesn't, it's not like the education was the end all be all. It's that public service, and in this case, uniform service. You can do good things while serving your country. You can do good things for yourself. It just happened to be this was my path.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I agree. I think that there's so many different opportunities and ways to join the military, and you just have to find what's right for you. And for every different person, that's their own path, and they just need to know, all the options. So that's really great. And so, did you have to switch majors when you got the scholarship?
No, they were right. It takes quite the clearance to do that work, to sit underground. And so I studied everything I dreamed of in a liberal arts education: political science, English, religion, psychology, and did well enough to sustain the scholarship. And then they did a crash course in all things nuclear after I was done.
Awesome. So you commissioned, and then did you go straight to training or to your first assignment? What was that like?
I went back in the day. They commissioned us, and there were no roles. This was their drawdown. So before September 11th, by a bit. I won't go into exactly when. I'm just kidding. So there was not a role for me yet. So I needed to get a job after graduation and for 6 months and hang out and do that. And then went straight to training and active duty. It was great.
That is awesome. And so you served on active duty for a while, and then after a few years, you transitioned to the reserves.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So what was your? Yeah, I stalked you on LinkedIn.
I don't know about your pathway. I'm hoping we get to hear more of your story. So if I had been at age 18 making my choices for life, nuclear command and control certainly wouldn't have even been on my mind as something I could do or wanted to do. But when I got into it, I loved it because of a few things. One, I think that the U.S. military, particularly, well, I don't want to say particularly, I haven't had the lived experience, but it really is about equality. I had the same opportunities because there wasn't a physical requirement, for example, for nuclear duty. And it was predominantly male. I think there were 4 of us out of 200, 4 women out of 200 people doing this job. So it was a chance to really perform or not. And there were 3 chances to fail every month that were cut and dry. In missiles, 90% is the last passing grade. Anything below that is unsat, and there are consequences. So it taught me a lot about attention to detail. And also my future rested on my colleague, because there have to be 2 people doing the job. So it was my motivation too, to make sure my partner was well trained. And you learn how to make really tough decisions, in this case, in just a few minutes. with less information than you want to have. And I think that's been a skill that translated that I couldn't have articulated at that time. So I'm grateful that something I had never imagined ended up being a fun fit, and I can continue to apply it for the rest of my life.
Yeah. Yeah, I had a similar experience because I went into civil engineering, and I'm in the process of looking to go back to school and use my GI Bill, and I was like, "Oh, I should do engineering." And so then I started to go down that path, and then I was like, "Why did I do engineering?" Because the Air Force told me I should do engineering.
Right.
And and what are you doing today? You're podcasting, you're writing. Maybe that's what you're actually passionate about. And so it was kind of funny to go through that like whole path of rediscovery and realize maybe this isn't what I actually wanted to do. It was what I was, encouraged to do and slash told to do. And that was how I ended up on that path.
I want to hear about, because I imagine that the path of an entrepreneur is taking all the life experiences you've had to that point and applying them in a new direction.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So we'll talk about that a little bit more later, but let's get back to your story.
Okay.
And so you did that, you were in like about 6 years, if I remember right, and then you transitioned to reserve.
This one, I haven't shared this before in a venue, but it's for women veterans, so I'll share it here. That it wasn't my choice to leave active duty, that I dual military, and that is the experience of a decent number of women veterans. And I happen to be married to a pilot. And in the Air Force, if all things are equal, the pilot's assignment comes first. And at the time that we were looking at assignments, there wasn't a way for dual military to be considered. And it was more of the treatment I had was, well, if we do it for you, we'll have to do it for others. Do it for me meant I had 4 opportunities where we both had open assignments in our career fields that we could have gone to. I had a by name request because I was the top evaluator for my weapons system. There's no reason it couldn't work, but it didn't. And again, back to, it's a voluntary service, and it's clear what's expected. And if I can't meet that, that's a choice. And so at that time, my choice was to leave the service at 8 months pregnant, and to I don't know what, or to accept an assignment where we'd be apart for 3 years with a newborn. And so I don't say that my choice was the right one. There is no right choice. It's just for my season in life, for our family, that was the choice. And so the transition was top of my game. I had places to go. I had a future that was pretty clear where my path was. And instead, I went to TAP, as it was back then. And I hadn't even considered the reserve. But when they said, well, your clearance, there's no way you can keep that up in the reserve. You'll have to get another job. Here's an AFSC that has a correspondence course for which you could qualify. Do you want to do it? What do you do? So for me, that far along in a pregnancy, and we are moving in a month for my husband's assignment, I said, thank you very much. I don't want to leave the Air Force. I hate that this is happening, but yes. So that's why I left when I did.
Yeah, and I mean, I feel like I can hear the emotion of like how hard that was, like even today, a
Yeah.
lot of years later, because that was in the 90s. I'm gonna give a little way, just
Yeah.
because I served dual military in 2007 is when I joined, and the attitude towards dual military was very different, which is a good thing because they worked to get us the same assignment and they worked to make it so that we could stay together. There still were points eventually in our career where we probably were going to get separated, which was a lot of the reason why I decided to get out. But it was when I was a lieutenant, they worked to get us assigned to the same place. And it wasn't like, oh, well, you're special. It was like, no, you're married. This is the policy. So
Right.
I'm sad to hear that's how it was in the 90s, but I'm also glad to hear that it didn't continue and that it began to change for families in the future.
Exactly. I think then why the emotion is right here is because when I retired just 3 years ago, I looked at my DD 214, and honestly, I hadn't looked at it since, because it was painful. But when I looked at the reason for separation, it said pregnancy, which put none of the accountability on the Air Force for what really went down. And that makes it feel like right up here again.
Yeah.
But you're right. That's one of the reasons I like doing the work I'm doing now, is that what better use of our time than to break down barriers that we encounter so that others don't have to. There shouldn't be like equal hardship just to prove something. Let's get rid of the hard stuff.
Right. Especially because you were at the top of your field and there wasn't an open position, even like a by name, and they were like, oh, we're just going to ignore that. Where in a normal case, they would have been like, oh, it's a by name request. Here you go.
Right.
And so it's kind of the opposite. You kind of got penalized for being married instead of given the job that you were. Yeah. And so, yeah, I mean, and with research and data, like that seems to be the way that the military changes. You know, we can't just have the stories. We need the research and the data to back it up.
Mm-hmm. Yes, we do. Absolutely. And a lot of research that on active duty populations lives within the Department of Defense. It's hard to get after that. So we are now here at the Daniello Institute, try to partner wherever we can to show what would be effective, what's the impact of the current policy, and work with those that do have access in those federally funded research centers, as an example. And then we do some of our own on what's happening with the military spouse during that time and what happens as a result of policy after during the transition period, and then fast forward many years. What does the effect of serving in the military have on the individual who served and their family?
Yeah. So I think the work that IVMF is doing, like you have the programs where you work directly with military spouses and veterans, but then you also have the
Mhm.
research side, and both are like so important in helping to shape policy and help veterans and
Yes,
spouses.
yes, absolutely.
I was like, because I'm both. I'm a veteran and a military spouse, so
Yeah,
I totally understand the challenge of both sides.
yes, you do.
Yeah. So you transitioned. You were super pregnant. It's kind of funny because when I took TAP the second time, because they were like, you have to take it within 6 months of leaving. I was 8 months pregnant too. And so I was like super pregnant, super uncomfortable. And so it's funny that we have like that similarity as well. But what was that like? Because that was kind of an abrupt, unexpected, plus I felt like it was really hard to go from being in the military to being a mom. So what was that like?
Oh, the things we don't know, right? When you're pregnant. I wasn't ready to give up that affiliation with the Air Force. So honestly, I moved to Albuquerque, New Mexico. June 1st was my first day as a reservist. I started on orders immediately, and I served until they made me stop because they didn't want to pay the bill for me to have that baby. So I jumped right in. And when I made it sound like I told you that I could qualify for this new AFSC with a correspondence course, that is not what it took to do the job. So I don't want anyone to think that public affairs was easier or less challenging than nuclear command and control. It just happened to be that was the door to entry. And I am so lucky. I had good mentors and a ton of opportunity on the ground to practice the craft and learn. And that's exactly what I did. And so some years in that transition, I worked over 200 days a year. And then other times after, especially post 9/11, we had 2 children. And one of my children, my last one, my third, was born while my husband was deployed. It was good. I'm so grateful that the reserve let me compress, do the minimum, and then do the maximum. So for those who've had the same dual military experience, wow, the reserve is a great pathway.
Yeah, it's cool to hear about how you had the opportunity to like expand and contract. I don't think a lot of people know about that. So can we talk a little bit? Because I don't think I've had people who are in the reserve, but no one specifically talked about like how they've changed their schedule to fit their life.
Yes. And I'll speak from I was an individual mobilization augmentee, an IMA. So it was more project based and what's the need of the active duty force at the time. So it wasn't like they could just create work. It was work to be done. And I just made myself available. And there was a minimum. I had to work at least 6 weeks out of the year, just like a traditional guard or reservist would do. 2 days a month, 2 weeks in the summer. The IMA just let you compress it if that's what the active duty force needed. And then I got to do things like special projects or exercises. And when I went to European Command, for example, I went on active duty orders for an entire year. And if you don't mind, I would like to spend one moment on that because it wasn't like it was vengeance I wanted against the Air Force, like you made a mistake. But I needed to prove to myself that I could excel in the career field I originally wanted to. So I did recertify as a reservist in nuclear command and control while I was at European Command. And I did a year and a half of service there, and I did really well. And it made me feel like, that's a little bit of closure. That felt really good.
Yeah. Well, and you did really well in your career because you retired as a colonel, right?
Yeah, some of that, as we know, is luck and the things you get to do and the time that you have available to put to it. So yes, but I feel like I hope the Air Force got as much from me as I got from it.
Yeah. It's interesting because I've interviewed so many women who are like are high rank and they always say, "Well, there was a little bit of luck." They never are like, "Yes, I did it on my own." They're like,
Yeah.
"People helped me. I was in the right place at the right time." Different things. So it's interesting to hear that theme carry through.
Yes, I think most of us, if we, and regardless of the rank, if we reflect on what's gone well for us, very few of us could say, I alone did it.
Yes, for sure. Yeah. I mean, even in my short career and I made it to captain, like I still have people that helped get me to where I was and teach me the things that I needed and I still look back on those leaders fondly and what I learned from them I'm still using today.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, so is there anything else from your time on active duty and then reserves, I guess reserve, that you want to touch on before we talk about your next transition?
I'm ready to go to the next transition.
Okay, so you got out of the military in 2022, right?
I did.
Yeah, and so you transitioned out of reserve and began a career. Is that when you switched to IVMF? No, you.
No, this is a little bit more fun story. I, like some dual military, there comes a time when the spouse says, it's my turn. Like, I love to do things. I'm grateful for the time I had with the kids and raising them and supporting my husband's career. Nothing wrong with that, but I was getting angsty and antsy. So, after European Command, I said, I know I can find an opportunity in DC. There's a bazillion jobs for him there. And so I declare that's where we're going. And it worked. I didn't say with or without you, I did not, but I then applied for a position at the US Small Business Administration, so federal service. And I entered that as a GS 15. And within a year and a half, was a senior executive in the SES Corps and sustained my reserve duty. You can imagine my reserve duty was quite compressed by then. So I didn't have, I'm sad about that because I was loving both. And unfortunately, especially during COVID, it was tough to have two different roles. But that was what led into my transition to civilian, a full-time career again, while doing the reserve work.
Okay.
All the way back in 2013.
Wow. Yeah. So it started before your like official transition. So
It,
was it a big shift to go from like a reserve where you could like set your schedule and compress it to like full time? Can we talk about that?
yeah, to full-time work. Yes. Particularly, I didn't see that many folks in my position in federal service that were also having a reserve career. So it was hard to do, and some of it came out of my personal vacation and whatnot. That's just the way that it goes. But it let me be a better advocate for and find other people who were in the same boat wherever they were in their reserve or guard career, and try and address some of the policies, a little bit of the bias about serving in two roles and how important both of them are.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really interesting. So it kind of gave you like a voice for advocacy because you were advocating for this small group that often was unseen and unheard.
Yes. And there's another, I still, this is one thing I haven't yet been able to do with, but I think I've got a way to do it in the near future, is there are so many things that reservists do in their civilian jobs that we don't get to apply in the military because you've been given one specialty. But I mean, outside of that, what we do every day in our jobs is incredibly different, complex, and could add a lot of value. So I'd love to see more fluidity in the ways that we can serve and break the structure of just, an AFSC, an MOS, or a rate.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and when I've interviewed past women who've served either in the National Guard or in the Reserve, and they also had a career, they talked about how they could take, you know, they were like a lawyer in their full-time job, and then they did like logistics, but they could use both parts of that career and tie them together. And it was interesting to hear how they were able to take pieces from the military life and pieces from their civilian life and put them together.
Yes, it's great when it happens in an ad hoc way, but there's a systemic way to do it. DoD is huge, I get it, but complex Fortune 1 to Fortune 50 companies have figured out complex things too for their personnel and talent management. So let's help them fix this.
Yeah, that sounds like a great idea. And so did you do that job until you retired, or when did you make the switch to IVMF?
I met the IVMF team while I was at the U.S. Small Business Administration. One of the portfolios, which I know you've experienced yourself, is in entrepreneurship. And I helped design the Boots to Business program, which is teaching folks about entrepreneurship as they're exiting service during TAP. That's when IVMF was presenting the curriculum for that way back then. So I got to know the team and their work, and it's only expanded since then. I took a short break and didn't work with IVMF while I worked on leading federal small business contracting programs like HubZone, 8A, Women-Owned, and SDV-OSB, which is Service Disabled Vet. So I got my teeth into federal acquisition regulations. That was a blast. And then Office of Disaster Assistance, helping people after hurricanes, fires, floods, and then COVID. Then that's when I needed a new direction. Like I said, COVID was tough on all of us in different ways. And my team was serving, we had a $16 billion grant program to execute in 6 months or less. And we were trying to help America's small businesses stay afloat during a really crazy time. So when the chance to work with the team at IVMF opened up, I hadn't seen them in about 4 years, but I was thrilled to be a part of this mission. And that's when the transition happened in 2023.
So kind of like COVID was over and you were ready for a change, and yeah. So can we talk a little bit about what IVMF does, and then we can dive into like more specifics about their programs?
You bet. Our mission is to ensure that America's veterans and their families thrive in their post-service life. That can mean a lot of things. For the portfolios that I am honored to lead, it includes business ownership, employment, and being connected in your community to the resources you need. So 3 things. And as you've already referenced, we also have great evaluation and research that some of it informs the programs. Others, it informs the policy of, hopefully the United States, but sometimes smaller policy interventions at a smaller level at an organization like another not-for-profit or at a state on how can we best serve veterans and military spouses.
Yeah. So you mentioned Boots to Business, but that's only one of, I was looking at the website and there's so many programs, a lot for entrepreneurs, but then there's also stuff for like community service focus. So why are there so many different programs? It seems like there could just be one program, but but obviously there's all these different needs. So why are there so many different programs, and what do they offer?
I think, I don't know about you, Amanda, but I don't wake up each day and go, I'm thinking of myself as a veteran. What resource or opportunity is available to me through just that one lens? It's a whole bunch of things. I'm a mother, a daughter, a sister, and I'm also a community member, and I'm a potential policy advocate. So you put that together, and there's some intersectionality of my veteran identity with a lot of other things I'm interested in and have opportunity in. So that is one reason I think that the IVMF has a broader approach, is that we should be engaged here because we are uniquely qualified to offer programs and to do research in these areas. I'll give you an example for employment. The IVMF really became more involved in the mid-10s with Onward Opportunity. And currently, it's a credentialing program primarily, but it also helps with that acculturation. I'm leaving service, or in the case of a military spouse, I'm about to start my career and it's been a long time since I've been in, or I've never been in the workforce. We help with the orientation and then the vector, connect you with an employer or get that certification in HR, IT, cyber, or program management. So you could get your PMP with IVMF for free because of generous funders that we have. So that's one thing that's post-service. We want your success. How many people are coming to us for that? Between 10 and 12,000 a year. Again, free, not asking to use your GI Bill, not charging you money. And on the entrepreneurship side, why are we involved in that? Because having a boss is not what everybody wants to do when they leave the military. There are entrepreneurs. Are you going to start immediately after leaving service? Probably not, our research says. But getting at least something in front of you as you transition to just have heard about it and to know that there's a resource available, that seems like a decent first step for many.
Yeah. I mean, there it really resonates the like finding your purpose and getting a vector, because in the military, that's what you do. You get a vector, this is where you're going, this is what you should be doing, and then you leave and you're like, wait, why is no one telling me what to do with my life? I feel like the hardest thing is to figure out like, what do I want to do? Like when I was talking about going back to school, it was really hard to even admit like engineering is not the right path, because that was what the military told me to
Yeah.
do. But like the more I dug into it, the more I was like, this isn't actually what I want to do. But it was really hard to come to that. And that's, I've been out for a long time.
And I love that you chose the word want for what you want to do. I think too many veterans immediately think, what can I do? And are still at that phase like, I need to be secure economically. What can I do? And to have the brain space and some support to think of the what do I want is great. And I am still not quite a Luddite, but AI can help in some of the skills-based approaches to looking at employment, and hearing, just getting like, even an interview, Amanda will tell me more about what kind of things do you enjoy? What have you just experimented with on the side? And you might have a propensity and a capability to do, but you just haven't been asked to do them for employment. There's so many more ways that we can more rapidly help people learn what it is that they want to do, and maybe just a few little interventions like a credential that would help them be qualified in the eyes of an employer to go do just that.
Yeah, because it's easy to look at like a job application that says like you need this many years of experience, and you're like, I haven't done that job. And it's like, no, you have. It's not that exact title, but you have done the skills that that job requires. And how do you translate that to help you understand that? And like I've learned, just because there's an application, that doesn't mean that you should just not apply because you don't meet one of the many things. So there's like so many things that you need to learn that you don't know until you have someone like IVMF tell you like, no, this is how it works. This is how you translate your skills.
Yes, and yes, that's perfect. We do help translate, and there, some of our research shows that women veterans and veterans of color are also going to face more barriers. So just you've got it. It's from other research, not ours, that says women are more likely to not apply for something if the qualifications are listed in that way. They'll want to be 100% qualified, whereas other applicants may think, I've got 60% of this, I think I could do it, and would go ahead and apply, just thinking they got it.
Yep. Yeah, for sure. I mean, I'm exactly that way. I'm like, check one of the boxes. I can't do it. So
right. We got some work to do.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I'm learning. I mean, I'm learning that that's the way I am, and I have to like go against my like natural instinct and be like, no, this is, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, but so you also, speaking of women, you have specific programs for women. So can we talk about those programs a little bit?
I'd love to. And then I'd like to hear about your experience, because you've gone through one of them. On the entrepreneurship side, for women veterans and women military spouses who are either thinking about starting a business, pretty close, done a decent amount of research, or have started, whether they're generating revenue or not, there's a program called Veteran Women Igniting the Spirit of Entrepreneurship. 3 phases. It's about 200 women. And the first phase is virtual, but engaging, and we're getting better and better every time at getting the groups into smaller groups so that you can really work together and learn and feel confident before you show up in person. The next one, for example, is coming up in May, and we charge nothing. You just have to fly yourself there. Feed you, hotel, and some amazing curriculum and speakers. And then the post phase is free post pro bono services on legal, marketing, access to all of us who helped you along the way. So there's a good chance that you will expand your network greatly. And the stats are amazing. So 60% of the women who go to VWise do start their venture within a year if they haven't already. and the sustainability, like how are those businesses doing 5 years later, is much higher than those who did not have the training. That has been sustained over years. We're on our 29th experience of VWise this coming spring, and I'm really pleased with the results. There's also, for women veterans, many of us don't identify, like I said earlier, that's not the primary identity that you have, or you don't recall your service proudly. There are many reasons we don't do things that are veteran related, and it's powerful to get this group of 200 women together who share that connection to the military.
Yeah. Yeah, I've been to a few women veteran conferences, and just being in a room with like over 100 women veterans is just, it's electric, and it's
Mm-hmm.
really special. So, yeah, I went through VWise in 2021, and my only regret is like the pandemic was kind of going on.
Yeah.
So, like, it was 2021, so like the pandemic was over, but everyone was still wearing masks, and like we kind of like stayed separate. And like I did meet a few people, but it wasn't, I think, as productive if it hadn't been like the COVID umbrella over it. But there was so much information, and I really wished I had gone sooner when I was starting my business, because there were so many things that I learned about, like small business administration was there, and the different ways to classify your business, and just different programs. And so it was so much information. I highly recommend early business owners to go to. And yeah, and I also like that you added that there's more connection point before, because there was pre-work, but I felt like it was done separately, and we
Mm-hmm.
didn't really get to know each other. So I love that you're like connecting people, so then when you show up, you already have people that you know and you can connect with and expand your network that way. So that sounds really great.
Yes, if I could endorse again, go early. Like my favorite thing is you don't want to have the forehead slapping moment when you're like, oh, I wish I had, and we can prevent some of those. And also, we are experimenting with having VWise alumni, so come back a second time. I'll let you know, Amanda. That might be one for you to take another look. It helps people, get that keel under the boat and nice straight steady line and keep going wherever you are. You're going to learn something valuable about business ownership. And just the ability to reconnect with people who have the same idea. Many of us as entrepreneurs find that there are plenty of naysayers on one side of the spectrum, and then there's the whole other side are like, yeah, finger guns, you can do whatever you got your mind to, you just need passion. Well, that's not true either. So I think VWise is one of those places where you can get the support you need and some rational researched feedback on your venture.
Yeah, you need that support, and like you need the gumption to do it, but just having like the gumption doesn't get you. You have to also have the tools to be able to do that. It's
That's
like,
right.
yeah. Yeah. Yeah, people that when I first started, people were like, "If you're passionate, it'll work." And I was like, "Then why isn't it working?" I'm really passionate, but there were so many things I didn't know that I needed to do. And and then once I started to make those connections, going to conferences, building my network, it started to change everything.
It does. And I am looking for more ways that I can connect women veterans to resources. So I'm glad you have found other conferences that have that same impact for you. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's incredibly valuable.
Yeah, is there anything else that VWise that IVMF is doing that you wanted to talk about that we didn't get a chance to cover?
Some people who have been in the veteran entrepreneurship space have heard of Bunker Labs, and we were
Oh
lucky
yeah.
enough to have them join us last year. And the change has been really dramatic in having the ambassador program. So now we have more people physically in locations across the United States that can bring all of those disparate resources and the programming together. So that's what I'm excited about, is if there's someone who wants to know a little bit more and what's close to me, I'd say check us out for that. And I hope that I can share my information with you, Amanda, so I can make those connections.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and that was one of my questions that I meant to ask, because when I was looking at all the programs, there was, a bunch of different programs through Bunker Labs, and I had heard of
Mhm.
Bunker Labs, and so to see that you guys are connected is makes it even better. So,
It
yeah.
really is. And the other thing I'd want people to know, we'll talk a little bit more about employment, but on the entrepreneurship side, you experience what we had at the ideation and startup phase, but we have all the way through $80 million companies that are working with us on how do I scale my company? How am I going to adjust to these tariffs or the changes in federal contracting? So we provide resources all the way through that, every kind of industry. Just if you're thinking about entrepreneurship and you're a veteran, this is the place. Start with us, and we don't tell you we can do it all. We'll make sure you find the right partners and get connected there.
Yeah, and I will link to your website and to your main website, and then also you have a website link just to the program so that people can click on all the different programs and see the ones that we've talked about, and that way people can find it really easily. And there's so much information. I was going through the website before the interview and I was like, oh, there's this and there's that, and there's so much information on there. So if you're interested in learning more, I highly recommend checking out their website. And one of my friends, Jennifer Volbrecht, she was on the podcast a while ago, but she has gone to multiple programs as her business has grown, and it's been fun to watch that she keeps going back to IVMF, and as her business grows, she goes and gets more advice and more resources and tools. So I can see that from my side, just watching her business grow and watching her continue to go to another class and another program, and so that's really great too.
I'm really glad to hear that. Thanks for telling me.
Yeah. I have my own personal success stories that I'm watching on LinkedIn. So, yeah. So, if you don't have any more stuff about IVMF and we got to talk about your career, I do like to end the interview with one last question, which is, what advice would you give to a young woman who's considering joining the military? So what would you say?
I'd say it could be a great choice to open doors that you haven't even contemplated yet, and to have a really strong belief in yourself before you begin the adventure, that you're valuable and you're going to find the way that you can best serve. So whether you've got it in mind that this is just to pay for college and getting out after 4 years, keep your mind open and try and make the most of the experience.
That's great advice. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for supporting Women in the Military podcast and sponsoring this episode. I'm really excited to share your story and to share about all the great work that IVMF is doing.
Thanks, Amanda. I've loved this conversation.